Yeah.
All right. Hi, Billy. Thank you
Hello.
so much for joining me on today's episode of Poppy's Perspective. What is your sort of core mission? What sets you apart in the space? Explain.
Yeah, so our mission is to kind of empower businesses more easily to make better decisions and drive kind of positive change in the sustainability space. So we're not, we want to provide people with the tools to be able to operate in this space themselves, because sustainability can often be quite a intimidating, scary space. People don't, necessarily know how to approach it. People often come from a real range of backgrounds, so you can't be certain what skills they have in the kind of the planning space. So we want to provide them with a tool to help them decarbonize, essentially. Decarbonisation is not the bank breaker that people often perceive it to be, and we think if they have a tool they can use, they'll realise it is cheaper and possible. So that's kind of our aim, to empower people rather than to be the ones doing it ourselves. We're trying to help
And
them.
if you had to describe what Zeroute does in like the shortest possible way you could, what would you say? Catchphrase.
Yeah, so we are a software and data company that provide businesses with tools and data to help them have a decarbonisation plan.
What's the biggest sort of trend you're seeing in climate change in sort of climate tech? And what major trend do you think is going to have the biggest impact on the industry? That kind of thing.
Well, obviously, it's a slightly uncertain time in the old climate space at the moment, as we're all aware, with things going on. But what we're seeing, and thankfully, one of the things we're looking to try and solve is that people are kind of realizing they need much more accurate data, greater granularity to data. There's a lot of averages just applied to the whole industry, which mean that people don't get the right information about their own business. And I think because of this, they're focusing on, because the data is not good enough and people are realizing the data is not good enough, people end up focusing too much on the data and measuring the footprint, and all their energy goes into measuring the footprint.
Yeah.
But like, now is the time to act. I think a lot of people are starting to say, look, this is the year that people actually start reducing their footprint, not just measuring it. And I think the only way we're going to do that is by them being confident they've measured it correctly. I think like there's this real lack of confidence in the measuring space sometimes that stops people doing anything. So I think the trend I think we'll see is there being a real improvement in the accuracy and granularity of data, which in itself will then drive the second trend of people actually acting, putting out their plans, saying this is how we're going to do it. At least that is what I'm hoping, because that's exactly what we're trying to do too. So that's what I hope the trend's going to be.
No, exactly. And I think especially when you say the word sustainability or ESG, literal the S in it is social, and you have to think about the social responsibility and being honest about it. So I'm not saying that averages aren't honest, but it's a lot better if you're just
it's just not perfect, is it? And also I don't think it needs to be perfect. I think that's another thing. I think like you need to be in this sweet spot. And at the moment I feel businesses are too far one way, like the average is too imperfect. There's no point aiming for absolute perfection because you're not going to get it. And also you don't need it, but we just need to be a bit more accurate, and then everyone will have confidence, and we'll go from there. Yeah.
What's the toughest challenge you're feeling? Maybe it's Zeroute, maybe just sort of the industry. What do you think the toughest challenge the industry is kind of facing at the moment?
No, I think yeah, I do think it is that. I think particularly when you're dealing with businesses in one country, or in the Western world, I think the toughest challenge is the quality of the data, just because without that you don't really know what to do. I think there's probably two other things though. I think we work with some global enterprises, and the variation in regulation. So when you are dealing with factories and suppliers around the world, you're just trying to decarbonize your supply chain. Like the variation in deregulation's a real problem, and also just the ambitions understandably the different ambitions in different parts of the world because of the where they are in the journey. I think that can be really difficult if you're saying to a factory in a less developed part of the world, by the way, we really need you to switch to electric boilers. They're going to be like, well, absolutely not. That's crazy. We're so far behind that, and I think that's difficult. And then the other thing I'd say is just fundamentally what's going on in the world right now, massive challenge. Wars, political uncertainty, political chaos at times. Like it just makes it very difficult to plan. And if you can't plan on something that is kind of very specific on regulations and changes, then you're just going to stick to your core business and carry on with that until And sustainability is so often the S in people's acronyms. It's so often the last letter. So it gets forgotten about when there's uncertainty.
No, it does. And I'm even seeing it on my side, and sort of people who are working in climate at the moment either don't want to leave their current job, even if it's not correct, because there's so much uncertainty, and maybe their company's providing security, or actually want to get out of climate, which is not going to be the solution, but just because there's so much insecurity and everything about it. And I think it is a real challenge. And I think that's why it's so important to kind of raise awareness of the companies that are doing things correctly and doing things well and doing things in a way that's not scary, but instead it's only sort of progressive. What does growth look like for you guys over the next few years? You're obviously sort of at that scale-up-y moment right now.
yeah, it's still really early. Like we incorporated in 2024, so we're
Yeah,
only a
really
year
early.
through, and we have clients, which is really positive. Like that growth's been really good so far. But yeah, success is, as I said at the start, we're aiming to provide a tool. We're not aiming to necessarily be the people who are doing everything ourselves. So kind of success is probably, or it's definitely, if we know that what we're providing is an intuitive toolkit for climate workers to use. If we're like really confident in our product, yes, if you use this, you will be able to do it. I think that would feel like success, and hopefully that would then lead into growth. And as I said, if we're providing this tool, if we've got lots of people using it, the kind of customer base, the number of licenses we're putting out to use this toolkit keeps on growing as it is now. So we're confident that people have these tools in their hands. These climate practitioners have these tools in their hands. That would be growth. So we're just trying to we're still developing the tool. We think it's pretty good, but it'll be successful when it's in the hand of lots more people, basically.
I think that's one of the things that lots of companies, well, not lots, but a few companies get wrong as well, is they are doing so much marketing when the product is in sort of the very early stages, and it's not when they physically feel proud or like it's finished, and then it has sort of natural success if when you launch it, it's finished, it's there. Not obviously you're going to get customer feedback, all of that kind of thing. And there's always room for improvement. But I think that you've got to get to that point first when you truly believe in your product, then you can put it out because
Yeah, and
that is success.
I think we've maybe unfortunately gone too far the other way in terms of probably because of the nature of the people involved in our company. Our product was probably ready before we did any marketing or selling, and so it's almost we've done it the wrong way around. Well, not necessarily the wrong way around, the other way around, and we need to be pushing it out more now rather than worrying about it being perfect, I think.
What qualities, what mindsets, what do you look for in your team? Is it a unified view? Is it a unified goal? What does that look like?
Yeah, so yeah, right now we do kind of have a real Zeroute DNA, which is we're all a group of we describe ourselves as technologists. We all have a background in simulation and optimization, and but that's kind of not that might be the current DNA, but that's not the key thing. That's not really what we're aiming for. As we don't want everyone like that. So really, what we're kind of hoping for when we're looking for people is we want people who are genuinely passionate about sustainability, and that's all types. Like we started by being the first version of our product is focusing on decarbonisation, but it will we will expand for that to be on water usage, land usage, waste, whatever it is. So it's not just decarbonisation for us. So we want people who are passionate about that, and then kind of a real sense of pragmatic people who realise that it's not going to be everything's not going to be rosy. There's going to be stepping stones to this process. You can't just go net zero immediately. There's going to be there's going to be some options that feel like they're small steps, but they're still steps. And really when I talk to people, it's the people who are really you kind of really value accuracy and honesty. That's it. It's people who don't want to they want to cut through the well the end of that phrase, but people who want to cut through all of that and just focus on the truth, accuracy, pragmatism. That's kind of what we're looking for.
Personal kind of question. Some people hate this, some people enjoy it, but you've obviously you've done a lot in your career. You kind of come a few different ways. Sort of, what's a failure? It could be professional, it could be in Zeroute, it could be prior to that, professional or personal, that became a turning point for you. Like what's an example of that? Something that taught you the most, I suppose.
Yeah, so I think professional from a Zeroute perspective, I think in a positive way, we're too early to have an obvious failure to talk about. So I'll go personal there. But yeah, I mean, I didn't say at the start, but my background's actually not in sustainability. It's only in the past couple of years that I've moved into sustainability. I used to be working elite sports, kind of my sport and sustainability being my two kind of passions. And so yeah, this is going to sound potentially fun, but as a failure, but it wasn't. I promise you. But I used to work for British Cycling in the Olympic cycling team. We were favourites to be to win the Olympic gold in Paris Olympics just happened, and we ended up getting silver. And I think in part because of some strategic decisions that I made in between the semi-final and the final. We were favourites to get gold and we got silver. What I've kind of learned from that, I think it's a habit I have, is because I like a process and being in control. I think when things weren't going quite as perfectly as we want, I kind of assume it's because of something I've done or something I've planned, and therefore feel like I need to change it. We need to change something, otherwise we're not going to win. Whereas actually, things were probably just going fine. There might have been a little blip, and it was probably caused by anything. Someone might have sneezed at the wrong time. It could have been whatever. But and actually, if I just let it run its course, who knows? We might have got gold. And I think that's true with startups. I think like how it's changed my approach in terms of you get kind of bombarded with opportunities as startups, and you think like oh, we could change our product and go down this way, or we could go down this angle, like all the time. And I think sometimes you just got to take stock and say, no, we chose to do this because we really understand this industry, and this is the route we wanted to go down. So let's stay on that route and kind of give it a crack. And of course, there are some opportunities that come up, and it's like this is right.
Yeah.
We learn something new, but not all the time. So I think, I think it's taught me to stay the course a bit more, kind of trust in the preparation. If you prepared well, you probably come to a good solution. So trust in the preparation, and only change once you really understood why you might be changing, not just because you feel like you have to.
Yeah. And I think it's sort of trusting the process, isn't it? And this could be Olympic cycling, or it could be it could be in a startup, like you're saying. And it's kind of just like, as it's that whole famous saying, if prepare to fail.
Yeah.
And it's exactly that. And it's sort of like, as long as you know where you want to be, getting there, if there's going to be roadblocks along the way, or if something's going to go terribly wrong or just sort of slightly wrong, trust the process, allow yourself to kind of feel how it's going to go through and go from there. And I think there's so many companies and so many climate sort of legislations, everything is just so that they look at the final goal and they don't think about how to get there. And I think it's sort of trusting that not everything can be controlled, and also as long as you have sort of thought things through to an extent, just kind of allow it to take its course, like you're saying. It's completely right. Is there any company, are there people, is there a movement in the industry that kind of inspires you and inspires like your day-to-day work, or the ethics, or the the mission statement of Zeroute, and just anyone or anything that comes to mind there that's sort of inspiring?
Yeah, it's funny this, isn't it? Because I imagine if you asked a lot of people a long time ago, they'd say Tesla.
They would.
I was thinking,
how's that changed?
Yeah, exactly. How's that changed? I was thinking, there's still some real positives there. But then I thought about another one, and which is by chance a slight personal connection, which is Octopus Energy. And the boss of Octopus, Greg Jackson. My brother works Octopus, so I kind of I'm close enough to understand what they're doing as well. I think their aim, like, to drive down prices, make sure it's actually climate first. I think the way the business is growing, from everyone I've heard about Greg specifically, who's either worked there or what's put out on the media, he's going about it, him specifically, running a business and approaching the problem in a brilliant way. Apparently, he's a great person to work for. So I'd say I find them pretty inspiring. I mean, a bit differently to us, where I said at the start, we want to provide the toolkit to help people do these things. I think you've got to be really brave to be like the person who's like, no, I'm just going to go and do those things. And they're pulling it off. I think they're pretty inspiring. Having a big impact in the UK, certainly. And I know they're growing everywhere. I know they're looking at expanding into different regions all the time. So yeah.
And then final question. You're obviously growing your own thing, you're doing your own thing. What is one piece of advice you'd either give to yourself at the start of this journey, or to somebody who wants to create a climate tech company, startup, anything along the lines? Do you have any sort of piece of advice for those people?
Yeah, I think, and this is applicable just to startups, not really specifically climate tech startups. And something I hold my hands up and say we could do better, but just don't forget the boring bits. Like, you do need to have the right contracts in place. You do need to think about your shareholder agreement. You do need to think about copyright, etc., etc. It's so easy to get caught up in particularly as I said earlier, things are beginning to pivot, caught up in the fun bits. And I think, I don't know this for sure, but I would guess, I've heard it happen to a lot of my friends, and I guess it's generally a regular occurrence. Businesses fall down because they haven't just dotted their I's and crossed their T's. So I just think no one wants to do it, but just make sure you don't forget the boring bits and check everything's sorted there. It'll be a lot harder to sort it out when you've grown to be a massive company, and then you've got to put all these systems in place. So
because there's such
a massive company.
Fingers crossed. Because there's such an allure as sort of having a startup, being self-employed, like amazing work-life balance, all of that stuff, and it's so glamorized. But
Absolutely.
you really do have to think about the things that in a day-to-day, if you're employed by somebody, there are things that you never think of, but when you're setting up a company, they are really things that are so important.
Yeah, and I think it's become, particularly as we've started growing, and we obviously started off as just the founders, and we started employing people. It's different for them because they're coming a bit later. They're coming probably from a normally contracted job where they're used to all of the systems in place, and you just think, like, they're not strictly potentially getting the same benefits as you from an equity perspective, or the same, or potentially bought into it in the same way. So you need to make sure that they've got the security from feeling like it's a proper business. And I think, very easy to forget.
No, it's so easy to forget, and that's probably the best piece of advice. It's not the most fun piece of advice in the world, but it's so real.
Sorry guys, I didn't come into something really fun.
Well, thank you, and everyone check out Zeroute, simplifying every day.